YouTube, it's Chris, welcome back to the channel. There's a few different ways you can sharpen your game. Unfortunately, some of those methods, you actually lose quite a lot of frames and you get quite a little bit higher latency. I wanted to benchmark those and I've done a GitHub guide on it. So if that's something that interests you guys, or head through this video, I'll show you guys the different methods and I'll show you the benchmarks. There should be a link down below to Linktree. In there, you'll find my GitHub. Go straight to GitHub, it'll take you to this page. Go ahead and click on Nvidia Legacy Sharpen. We'll go over this in a little bit, but to actually get the files, you just click code, download zip. It should be in our downloads folder shortly. In our downloads folder, just right click and go extract all. Okay. And then honestly, we'll just drag this to a desktop and we can work from the desktop. All right. So I'll go over it sort of real quickly and shortly. So why have I done this? I have a lot of people ask me about what sort of sharpening I like to use. Now, we're sort of lucky nowadays. A lot of games have the Fidelity FX CAS in game, which is great. And you should just be using that. But not all games have a sharpening filter sort of built into them in the graphics options. Especially if you're playing on a sort of like a lower resolution, adding a bit of a sharpening filter can really sort of make or break the experience, especially for spotting out people and stuff like that. So this is a superior alternative for sharpening your game. You are going to need an Nvidia graphics card for this. I haven't forgot you AMD guys. Alternative for the AMD GPUs, you can literally use radiant image sharpening in the driver settings. So that looks like this, okay? I'd recommend starting out with like 50% and you can crank it up a little bit if you want. That'll apply it in all games, or if you've got the full AMD driver, you can go as per game basis, which is really, really nice. Now this is similar, or if not the same as Fidelity FX CAS in game. If you want to sharpen your game and you have Fidelity FX CAS in game, don't bother doing this method. There's no point. Fidelity FX CAS, very, very minimal impact. You're better off just using that. But like I said before, not all games have a built-in sharpening option. So that's why I sort of made this guide and I've benchmarked everything. So AMD's sharpening is probably the best, I'll be honest, and very, very minimal impact on latency and frame rate. From what I remember, my 6900 XT was only like 5 FPS, but I have benchmarked Fidelity FX CAS with the Nvidia card. We'll see that in a little bit. So why have I done this guide? Why does it matter? So GeForce Experience game filters significantly reduces frame rate, okay? And I've said this time and time again, do not use filters to people. Nvidia image scaling, which is another way of sort of sharpening the image, significantly ruins the image quality. It's forcing a lower resolution, and it also forces GPU scaling, which increases latency. So like legacy sharpening enables you to enhance the game's sharpness through display scaling, resulting in minimal impact in frame rate and latency, and without any loss in image quality. So like I was saying before, only use legacy sharpening if Fidelity FX CAS sharpening is not available in the game, okay? Now, here's where it gets quite interesting, and I'll show you guys. If you're using a monitor that has display stream compression, you will already have this setting available to you. It's sort of like a legacy setting that Nvidia sort of took away and tried to replace it with Nvidia image scaling, but Nvidia image scaling is horrible. There's a way for us to get that back quite easily by just running a reg key, or just changing it in regedit, okay? Now, here's where there's sort of a bit of a catch, and I'll show you guys what you need to do. If it's a DirectX 12 game, DirectX 12 game has shaders, and this can be a bit of a problem. You will want to delete the shader cache files or reload the shader cache after you've applied this optimization, if the shader cache files have already been loaded when the optimization wasn't applied. You guys can look and have a bit of a read of the GitHub if you want to clear some things up. If I don't cover everything in this video, it should be all pretty straightforward here. So here's roughly what they can look like. And also it can do weird things with smokes as well, but you can get sort of like a rainbow effect color. And also, as you can see, like the shadows are all blocky. So that is artifacts, and that is not artifacts. So if it's not a DirectX 12 game, you don't have to worry about it. You can simply toggle this setting on and off, the legacy sharpening. But if it is a DirectX 12 game, it's highly advisable that you apply the optimization, delete the shader cache files, or see if you can do that option in game. So I'll show you guys how to do that. I've got some comparisons here. There's no point showing you guys on YouTube, and I used 50% for sharpening for all of the settings. But if you guys want to go on GitHub and then blow these images up and compare them against each other, go ahead. And here's the benchmark right here. So let's have a bit of a look at this. I'll full screen this. So default's always going to be the best option, but Realistically, a lot of games in this nowadays on lower resolutions, especially, I mean, the guys that are using lower resolutions, you're going to want to use this for most of your games if you don't have a sharpening option built in game. It's sort of just a must. The default's always going to be best, right? No processing. Fidelity FX CAS, if it's in the game, that's your second best option. As we can see, we've got the frames, 1%, 0.1s, and an actual throughput latency here. Okay, and then legacy sharpening is your next sort of best option. So I generally use this on a lot of titles if I'm playing on my lower resolution monitors that have sort of bad visibility issues. A lot of AAA title games now that are newer tend to not look so good on lower resolutions, and it can be hard to spot out enemies and stuff like this. So here's a nice alternative. Small impact on frame rate, very, very minimal, and realistically no impact on latency at all, which is nice. Okay, Nvidia image scaling. Now, realistically, we should be getting a lot more frames here, but there's something else going on in the back end. Because we're actually running a lower resolution, there is no way to run Nvidia image scaling 1-to-1. So it's kind of like DLSS before DLSS was a thing. It's basically just forcing GPU scaling on the graphics card, so you're not using display scaling, that it's using a lower resolution, and it's sort of like upscaling it with pixels somehow, and then applying a sharpening filter on top of that. So I'm not able to benchmark 1-to-1, but sort of the impact on the latency there, that would probably just be, honestly, probably the difference of GPU usage. We might be slightly lower the GPU usage, but the reason why it's higher than these is because this is actually forcing GPU scaling. So from my tests in the past, GPU scaling is roughly 0.3 milliseconds slower. It can depend on the display itself, but generally speaking, if you've got a monitor that does display scaling, that's the small impact on latency, right? GPU scaling is always worse. And down the bottom, GeForce filters, which I always say never ever use. Now, GeForce filters, it doesn't work like one or the other way. It's like you can have one filter on or like 20 filters. It doesn't matter. It affects the frames exactly the same. It's just a matter of whether it's on or it's off. It's incredibly GPU heavy. Look, if you're playing something like Counter-Strike or Valorant or even Escape from Tarkov on a really, really good graphics card, they're so CPU bound, you're probably not going to notice. But in games that are actually somewhat GPU bound, you're going to lose roughly 100 frames. And it's always sort of been 100 frames for me, even from what I remember testing this stuff with my 2080 Ti and my 3090. Same. So GeForce is kind of a bit of a no-no, honestly. And the reason why the latencies come up here is because, one, we're getting less frames, and two, it actually might be a little bit higher GPU usage, but sort of Reflex kind of takes care of that if we're completely GPU bound anyway. So that's the benchmark. So what I'll do now is quickly show you guys how you can apply these different sharpening settings if you want to muck around with them. Okay, so I'll boot up the game, and I apologize that I've benchmarked with Modern Warfare 3 specifically. Unfortunately, it's just a really reliable benchmark, and it's consistent, and it's one of the games that has CAS built in. I originally wanted to benchmark Overwatch, but unfortunately my graphics card is too good to benchmark Overwatch with on 1080p, and I was just getting a constant 600 frames no matter what. So let's get on with it. I do plan on including a lot of other games to be benchmarking with. I'm just sort of in the middle of setting up some of my templates, so soon I'll have a vast majority of different games to be able to benchmark with, guys. So just stay posted for that. But for now, I really didn't want to benchmark with this game. I'm not even playing this game anymore, but it's something that shows scaling quite easily. Okay, so this is roughly what it should look like by default. There we go, it's loaded in. So this, especially games like this game that kind of force anti-aliasing. Yeah, I've done a video on how to disable it, but you sort of lose frame rate with that method. So roughly what it looks like if a game has AMD CAS in. So this isn't using an upscaling method at all. This is just a sharpening filter, and it should work or behave or almost is the same thing as doing it in your AMD driver for the AMD guys. But if you have this option in game, just use this. Okay, so depending on what resolution, if you're on 1080p, you're probably going to want to have it cranked up quite a little bit. Most guys on 1080p are just putting this at 100 and calling it a day. Sharpening up the image, making it easier to see what you're looking at. Okay, so another option is GeForce filters. So I'll turn off CAS right now. Now we're going to get 100 frame fit here. If you have GeForce installed. If you don't, go ahead and install it. You don't have to wipe your driver to install it. You could just get the GeForce download instead. If you are on a minimal driver and don't want to completely wipe your driver, you can just do it that way. You just have to put on sort of a filter here, and I had already added that before. I remembered from this game. It generally has got pretty good memory. So Sharpen here, this one is the same as the legacy, which is what we're going to be using in the Nvidia control panel, but because it's applying this through the GeForce overlay, we're going to lose like a lot of frames. Specifically with my hardware, as you saw, it was roughly 100 frames. For the purposes of those benchmarks and videos that you've seen, I actually use Sharpen Plus. I actually think it's a little bit better. So if you are using game filters, which are really highly advised against, here's what the Sharpen Plus looks like. So have a play around with it if you want, but I really wouldn't recommend having filters on at all. If you want peace of mind, you can permanently turn off filters. If you really want to, you won't be able to screenshot with this off until you turn it back on, but that will permanently turn it off. All right, back in the desktop. So now we can try NIS or Nvidia image scaling. There's two ways to do it. One, we can do it in GeForce Experience, and it'll apply it to sort of everything. Got our options. I believe it's general, scroll down, and there's image scaling there. We can toggle it on here. Another way to do it is in the Nvidia control panel. Okay, image scaling there, or if you want to apply it for a specific game, like Call of Duty, you can add it and you can apply it here. So it does exactly the same thing. So I'll leave it off here. I'll turn it off on in GeForce Experience, and then I'll show you that it gets applied in the driver settings as well. Okay, they're the same thing. See, Nvidia's image scaling is on at 50% sharpening. Play around with it. There's even an overlay indicator, which is kind of cool. On the top left, it will show NIS in like a small green text. Now for this video, as this has been documented, I benchmarked on 85%. Unfortunately, there's like no one-to-one option, but I wouldn't want to use it anyway because it is forcing GPU scaling. Okay, and you can kind of see there how everything's sort of blanked out. Ignore that it's saying display. It needs GPU scaling for this. So the guys that have display stream compression, you can't even use this feature. If you have display stream compression, you can't use integer scaling, you can't use DSR factors, you can't use a lot of things with display stream compression. And hopefully Nvidia will end up fixing that at some point. Okay, so I'll show you what that looks like in game real quick. Now, unfortunately, YouTube's compression and like photos do not justify how bad this actually looks in motion. So I can't really show you properly, unfortunately. But this setting could be worth playing around if we didn't have things like DLSS back in the day. I really wouldn't use this. Now, we can actually muck around with it in GeForce as well. I believe there used to be an option to be able to change it around a little bit. Okay, apparently not. There isn't. So I guess you're going to have to do it in the GeForce control panel or the driver. Same. I'm not sure if you have to restart. Let's try that now. I've actually not tried that. I don't really see any visual difference, so I'm going to guess you're probably going to have to restart the game to toggle this sharpening setting by the looks of things, unless it's just such a bad resolution that I can't really tell. But I'd rather none of you actually use a feature like this. You're better off if you have to and you've got a lower end card mucking around with DLSS or AMD's option of that that's in game available to you. Now, if you had to play around with this and you've had it on, I just want to give you some advice. If you're going to go ahead and turn it off, either in here or the driver, so just for the video's sake, I'll turn it off in the driver and show you that it reflects in GeForce as well. So we'll just turn it off there and apply. Your screen will flicker a little bit. Looks like OBS is flickering over there for you guys too. All right, that's off now. So we'll go back to GeForce Experience. And you'll see that it's reflected off here. The same setting. So technically you could use it without GeForce. I'm not sure if it lets you change actual render resolution without GeForce. Not sure about that one, but I don't want you guys using the setting regardless. Now, here's a little tip. This bugs out. If you've played with it, please go back into set up your desktop size and position. Yeah, great. I'm glad it actually did it this time. For some reason, GPU scaling will stay on. If your monitor has a display scaler, you should be using display scaling, okay? It is lower latency. Without even me just doing that individual test, you could roughly see that there in the benchmark that I did between the other options and NIS, right? So go ahead and toggle display back on if you've played with that setting, and make sure that you're on display scaling. Okay, so we want to use the legacy sharpening, right? We don't have that available option available to us, and that was the whole point of this video, right? We want legacy scaling back. So like I said, if you've got a display stream compression monitor, at the moment mine's turned off just for this video. I can toggle it on and off, so when it's off I'm stuck at 360. When it's on I can go to 540. So that was really helpful for this video. We want to turn it back on. So that guide that we downloaded, here's the folder, open it up. Just to be safe, some of these files might be blocked if you've downloaded them, okay? It's not here for me at the moment, but it probably will be for you. There's a little script, it's safe, run it, it will unblock all the files in this directory. It'll say files unblocked, press any key to continue. You guys will probably have an admin prompt come up, just press yes, go ahead. Now the files should be unblocked, so you'll have no problems. We have Nvidia legacy sharpening that you can apply, and the revert option. So if you guys ever want to go back to the revert stock option, it is there if you need it. Pro tip, if you followed my new optimization guide, my registry.ps1 applies this anyway, because no one should be using NIS, Nvidia image scaling. So we'll go ahead and run Nvidia legacy sharpening, click yes, click OK. Now when we go to the Nvidia control panel, we will have legacy sharpening here. So see underneath image sharpening, we've got legacy sharpening here. Now, word of advice, the default settings are quite good. Do not turn on GPU scaling, okay? I've already talked to you about that and the latency penalty for going on GPU scaling. Start out with ignore film grain to 0. If it looks maybe a little too much, you can either bump down sharpening or just put the ignore film grain to the default 17. It is nice. It's going to depend on the game, the resolution that you're playing, so have a play around with it. And there is no difference in frame rate or latency between the scaling of these settings. It's either on and off or affecting it or not. All right, so if you're using this technique, I wouldn't recommend applying it globally because it's probably going to apply for your web browsers and stuff like that. It won't look so nice. So go ahead to program settings, click add, and then choose whatever game you've opened recently, add selected program. You can go ahead and toggle it on there, okay? Now another pro tip, like games that kind of, if you're using anti-aliasing, this is not going to look so nice, especially TAA. So ideally, if the game will allow you to disable anti-aliasing, like the sharpening is going to look a little better. Now, once we've done that, we really want to delete the shader cache. Otherwise, we're going to have the same plagued issue as you guys could see here that I was showing you earlier. Specifically for this game, it is fairly easy to delete the shader cache. So you're just going to have to find your game location. All right, for me, it's just here. All right, so there's the game folder location. We want to go to retail, COD 23 and shader cache. That's all of them there. Select all of them and then go delete. You can safely delete these files. Now this has happened to me before. If the shaders aren't loading at all, and usually it's not a problem other than COD, other game engines, like the files aren't there, it'll reload them. If they're not reloading, it's stuck on 0, go ahead and go to graphics. Click on restart shaders preloading, and then just exit the game and then open the game again. It's pretty straightforward. Now, it's not easy to find like all folders where the shader cache is for all games. So you might have to have a bit of a look around. Battlefield used to have the shader cache in here. It is now in program data or app data or something. I can't remember off the top of my head. Look, I'll give you guys another game just as an example. If you're playing X Defiant and you want to try the sharpening filter, I don't know why you would, because there is a sharpening option in game anyway. But like say you wanted to add another sharpening filter on top of what you did in game. The shader files are in here, right? So that'd be for DirectX 11. That's for DirectX 12. I think I've recently deleted them. So you can safely just delete the things that are in these folders. Fine. But if you get stuck, and let's just say, as an example, when I was playing Modern Warfare 2019, I was unable to, you couldn't really find the location of it. So as I've mentioned in this guide here, if that happens and you really want to use it, what I would do is I would actually install a new driver, okay? So if you're on the latest driver, unfortunately, you're out of luck. I would just probably DDU and roll back to like maybe an older driver, or even just DDUing should do the trick, and just reinstall the latest driver that you were on. But make sure you do the optimization and apply this before you boot the game. That's very, very important. So that'll fix it. So either switching driver versions or DDUing the driver, reinstalling the driver, and applying this before you launch the game will fix the artifact issue. But in the perfect world, every game has a shader cache location that you can delete. And in even more perfect world, the game should have an option to reload shaders, which unfortunately not all games do. But that should get you guys out of trouble. It is a really nice optimization, especially for you lads out there that play on lower resolutions. Modern AAA FPS titles look horrible on lower resolutions, almost by design now. Game developers are getting a little lazy. They kind of just coded in 4K textures, the game, and then anything else on a lower resolution is sort of like an afterthought. So this could really help some of you guys out, or even some of you guys out there that are playing on high res that just want just a little bit more oomph to your display. Legacy sharpening is the way. Right. Thanks for watching the video. Got plenty more videos planned in the future. Subscribe, like, share. I'll see you guys around. Bye.
Sharpen your image, sharpen your face.